The first time I met Ethan, it felt like I'd been struck by lightning. Not the destructive kind, but the sort that lights up everything around you, making the world seem brighter, more vibrant. I was coming off a string of meaningless hookups, each one leaving me more jaded than the last. Then Ethan walked into my life with his easy smile and a heart so open it made me want to believe in something as naive as true love again. We hit it off instantly. It wasn't just attraction, it was as if our souls had known each other for lifetimes. Months flew by in a blissful haze, and before I knew it, I was saying those 3 words I thought I'd barricaded away for good. I love you, I whispered to Ethan one night, under a sky heavy with stars, his arms wrapped around me in a promise of forever. He brought out a version of me I thought was lost, a version of me that believed in love, in us. But life has a cruel way of testing what we hold dearest. Ethan's job whisked him away to another city, turning our once inseparable bond into a long-distance challenge. We promised to make it work, plastering over the cracks with video calls and weekend visits. Yet, the void his absence left in my daily life was palpable. Enter Leo, a new coworker with a laugh as infectious as his personality. We became fast friends, finding solace in each other's company amidst the monotony of work. Leo was everything Ethan wasn't, unpredictable, thrilling, right there. He filled the Ethan-shaped hole in my life, and before I knew it, I was rationalizing an affair as just a temporary fix. A way to feel less alone. I spun a web of lies, telling Leo that Ethan and I were in an open relationship. It was easier than admitting the truth, even to myself. The affair became my secret escape, a place where I didn't have to face the loneliness waiting for me at home. But Ethan wasn't fooled. His voice on the phone turned cautious, probing. Is everything okay, Anna? You seem distant. I could hear the worry lacing his words, a silent acknowledgement of the growing chasm between us. My assurances did little to mask the guilt that clung to my every word, a constant reminder of the double life I was leading. As Ethan's suspicions grew, so did my desperation to cling to the fragments of our relationship. But with every lie I told Leo, every pretend smile I flashed Ethan over video calls, the heavier my heart grew. I was trapped in a web of my own making, torn between the comfort of my past and the excitement of the present. The truth was, I was addicted to the thrill Leo offered, a thrill so intoxicating it made me forget the reasons I fell for Ethan in the first place. But as the lies multiplied and the truth threatened to surface, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to lose everything I ever cared about, for a fleeting moment of excitement that was never meant to last. The world seemed to shrink to the space between Leo and me, his gaze pinning me with an intensity that felt like a physical touch. Where do we stand, Anna? He asked, his voice a mix of hope and caution. The question, simple yet loaded, dangled in the air like a guillotine. I knew then that my tangled web of lies was about to ensnare me. Leo, with his earnest eyes and dreams of a future together, deserved more than the half-truths I'd been feeding him. But admitting the full extent of my deceit meant facing the ugliness of my actions head-on. I made my choice in a moment that felt both impulsive and inevitable. I want to be with you, Leo, I said, my voice steadier than I felt inside. The decision to leave Ethan for Leo was intoxicating, a rush of adrenaline that blurred the lines between right and wrong. Leo's smile, wide and genuine, was all the confirmation I needed that I'd made the right choice. But beneath the euphoria, a nagging sense of guilt lurked, uninvited and ignored. Breaking up with Ethan over the phone was the coward's way out, and I knew it. My words were clinical, detached, as if I was discussing someone else's life. Ethan, I can't do this anymore, I said, the truth tasting bitter in my mouth. His silence was deafening, a void where I'd expected anger or pleas for an explanation. Instead, there was only a resigned sigh, the sound of a heart breaking quietly on the other end of the line. The aftermath was a mess of emotions and unanswered questions. Ethan, in his pain, sought understanding, a way to make sense of the senseless. Our conversation the next day was a marathon of confessions and apologies, a cathartic release for emotions too long bottled up. I admitted to everything, the affair with Leo, the lies, my reasons and justifications, all laid bare. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm a liar, and I've hurt you in ways I can never undo, I confessed, the words scraping raw against my throat. His response was not what I expected. There was no anger, no accusations. Just a quiet acceptance that chilled me to the bone. I just wish you had been honest with me, he said, his voice heavy with unshed tears. It was a conversation that marked the end of us, a closure that offered no comfort, only the stark realization of the damage I'd caused. In the days that followed, I told myself I would work on my issues, that I would become someone worthy of love and trust. Yet, as I watched Ethan retreat into his work, putting distance between us with a professionalism that masked his pain, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. My betrayal had not just ended our relationship, it had irrevocably changed him, turning the man I loved into a stranger. Ethan's attempt to move on was a mirror to my own struggle with guilt and self-loathing. I saw him throw himself into his job, each achievement a step away from me and the havoc I'd wreaked in his life. It was a haunting reminder of the cost of my actions, a price paid not just by me but by the one person who had loved me unconditionally. The thrill had worn off, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste of regret and loneliness. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadowy contours of my room feeling more like a prison than a sanctuary. Leo, who once seemed like a beacon of excitement, had become distant, his patience worn thin by my inability to fully commit, my heart still tangled in the remnants of what I had with Ethan. I couldn't shake the memories of Ethan's unwavering support, his understanding nature that had once been my rock. In stark contrast, Leo's charm had begun to reveal cracks, his once exciting unpredictability now a source of anxiety. He lacked the depth of empathy Ethan had offered freely, making me realize the gravity of what I'd lost. Driven by a mix of desperation and longing, I reached out to Ethan, hoping to glimpse the life I'd thrown away. But the man I met was not the Ethan I remembered. He had changed, his aura now one of strength and self-assurance that I had never contributed to. It was clear he had moved on, finding solace in new hobbies and friendships that had allowed him to rebuild the self-esteem I had shattered. Our encounter was brief, the chasm between us wider than I had anticipated. Ethan was polite, but his eyes were guarded, a clear barrier to any hope of reconciliation. The realization that I was truly alone hit me like a physical blow. Not long after, Leo ended things between us, his words a final nail in the coffin of our relationship. "I can't do this anymore, Anna. You're never fully here, always lost in what you had with Ethan. And your lies. I can't trust you," he said, his voice devoid of the warmth it once held. I was left reeling, abandoned by the very person I had sacrificed everything for. The confrontation with Ethan came unexpectedly. He sought me out, not out of a desire to reconcile, but to express the pain and betrayal he had endured. "I needed to do this for myself, to close this chapter for good," he said, his voice steady and resolute. He spoke of the hurt, the lies, and the betrayal, but also of healing and moving forward. It was a conversation that offered no solace, only a stark reflection of the damage I had caused. Left to confront the wreckage of my actions, I was forced to face the truth of my self-destruction. The realization that I had not only lost the love of my life but had also pushed away a potentially good thing with Leo left me in a state of profound solitude. The pain of my choices became a constant companion, a reminder of the cost of my selfishness. In the silence of my room, with nothing but my thoughts for company, I began to reflect on the path that led me here. The excitement of the affair, the allure of something new, had blinded me to the beauty of what I already had. My actions, driven by a need to escape the perceived mundanity of commitment, had led me to this point of no return. It was a harsh lesson in the consequences of my choices, a realization that the thrill I sought was fleeting, but the scars it left were permanent. Alone, with nothing but regret to fill the void, I understood the depth of my folly, mourning the loss of a love that was once mine to cherish. The day I started therapy was the day I finally admitted to myself that I was the common denominator in a long line of failed relationships. Sitting in that too quiet room, facing a stranger who held my fragile hopes of change in her hands, I felt the weight of my past decisions like never before. It was a humbling realization, one that came not a moment too soon. "I need to understand why I do the things I do," I confessed, the words tasting like the first step on a long road to redemption. Meanwhile, Ethan was flourishing, his life a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I heard through the grapevine of his promotions, of the new love in his life, and though each piece of news twisted a knife in my heart, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for him. He had moved beyond the shadow of our past, finding happiness and success that was no longer tainted by my betrayal. The contrast between our lives couldn't have been starker. My attempts at reaching out to Ethan were met with polite but firm rejection. "I've moved on, Anna. I wish you all the best," he told me, his voice void of the warmth it once carried. It was a necessary but painful closure, a door firmly shut on any fantasy of reconciliation I might have harbored. In therapy, I began to unravel the threads of my behavior, tracing the patterns back to their origins. It was a painful process, confronting the truth that I had sabotaged not just my relationship with Ethan but nearly every meaningful connection I'd ever had. "You've been repeating a cycle, Anna," my therapist pointed out, her words a mirror reflecting a truth I could no longer ignore. As Ethan's star rose, mine seemed to dim. Leo, once an ally and confidant in my professional life, distanced himself, the repercussions of my personal decisions bleeding into my career. Opportunities dried up, and I found myself on the outskirts of the network I had once been central to. It was a sobering reminder that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences extend far beyond the confines of our personal lives. Ethan's ability to find closure and rebuild his life served as both an inspiration and a cautionary tale. It forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth that his healing had nothing to do with me. I was not the architect of his recovery, I was the chaos he had overcome. This realization was a bitter pill to swallow, but it also marked a turning point in my own journey towards understanding and, hopefully, forgiveness. Alone, both professionally and personally, I was forced to reckon with the reality of my situation. The loneliness was crushing, but it was also a catalyst for genuine change. I was no longer the woman who sought escape in the arms of another or the comfort of lies. I was someone who recognized her faults, who was fighting to break free of the patterns that had defined her for too long. In the quiet of my apartment, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. It was marked by loss and regret, but also by growth and a glimmer of hope. Ethan had found his peace, and now, it was time for me to find mine. Not in the arms of another or the accolades of a career, but in the hard, unglamorous work of self-improvement and accountability. It was a daunting path, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to walk it. The moment I realized I was utterly alone wasn't marked by some grand event. It was the quiet accumulation of ignored calls and unreturned messages that finally made it clear. Friends, colleagues, even casual acquaintances seemed to have collectively decided I was persona non grata, a reality that hit me like a ton of bricks. It was as if the world had moved on, leaving me stranded on an island of my own making, surrounded by the debris of burned bridges and lost opportunities. Meanwhile, Ethan's life was on an upward trajectory, a stark contrast to the downward spiral mine had become. I heard through mutual friends, the few who still spoke to me, about his newfound happiness. Ethan had met someone new, a woman named Claire, who was everything I wasn't: trustworthy, stable, and kind. The news should have cut me, but instead, I found a twisted sense of relief in it. Ethan deserved happiness, even if it wasn't with me. The realization that Ethan had moved on for good came into sharp focus when I learned of his engagement. The news was a sobering reminder of all I had lost and all he had gained from our painful parting. Ethan's ability to trust and love again after everything we'd been through was a testament to his strength, a quality I had once admired and later taken for granted. My professional life, once a source of pride and accomplishment, had crumbled alongside my personal relationships. Without the network I had so carelessly alienated, job opportunities became scarce, and financial stability turned into a day-to-day struggle. The luxury and security I once knew felt like distant memories, replaced by the stark reality of overdue bills and mounting debts. In a last-ditch effort to salvage some semblance of my former life, I reached out to those I had wronged, hoping for forgiveness, or at least understanding. But the doors I knocked on remained closed, the damage I had done apparently too deep for apologies to mend. It was a humbling experience, one that forced me to confront the consequences of my actions head-on. Despite everything, I clung to the hope that my attempts at redemption would someday bear fruit, that the lessons I was learning the hard way would lead to a better, more honest version of myself. But as Ethan's wedding day approached, a day filled with celebration and love, I couldn't help but feel the full weight of my isolation. The news of Ethan's marriage, a union celebrated by friends and family, was a poignant reminder of the life I could have had, a life filled with love and companionship, had I not let my own selfish desires lead me astray. Watching from the outskirts, unable to share in the joy, I was reminded of the cost of my choices, not just to myself, but to the man I had once loved and the life we could have built together. Alone, I reflected on the path that had brought me here, the series of choices that had seemed so inconsequential at the time but had led to my undoing. It was a bitter pill to swallow, the realization that I was the architect of my own downfall. But in that solitude, I also found a glimmer of hope. The road to redemption was long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time, I was ready to walk it, not for Ethan, not for anyone else, but for myself. From the window of a cramped apartment halfway across the world, I watched the sunset bleed into the horizon, a fiery end to yet another day spent running from the past. My journey, a desperate attempt at self-discovery, had taken me to the far corners of the earth, searching for something, anything, that might fill the void Ethan's absence had left in my life. But with each new city, each fleeting connection, the realization grew stronger: you can't outrun your own shadow. Back home, Ethan's life was flourishing. I heard about his latest promotion through the digital grapevine, a testament to his dedication and resilience. It was a bittersweet pill to swallow, knowing his success was built on the ruins of what we once shared. Yet, there was a part of me that swelled with pride for him. Ethan had always been destined for greatness, and I, in my selfishness, could have been the anchor that dragged him down. My own descent into obscurity was as swift as it was merciless. The vibrant social life I once boasted, filled with friends and admirers, had dwindled to nothingness. My actions, once excused as youthful indiscretions, had finally caught up with me, leaving me isolated in a self-made purgatory of regret and what-ifs. Through snippets of conversations and online updates, I learned of Ethan's growing family. The joy and fulfillment he found in fatherhood were emotions I had once dreamed of sharing with him. Instead, I was a spectator to his happiness, a ghost haunting the edges of a life I had forfeited the right to be a part of. My travels, initially a quest for enlightenment, had become a mirror reflecting the inescapable truth: wherever you go, there you are. My problems, insecurities, and regrets had packed themselves along for the ride, steadfast companions on a journey that promised much but delivered little. Ethan's reflection on the past, shared in a rare moment of online vulnerability, struck a chord deep within me. He spoke of the pain and betrayal, but also of growth and gratitude. His words were a reminder of the strength found in forgiveness, both of oneself and others. It was a lesson I was still learning, one painful step at a time. My return home was not the triumphant comeback I had envisioned. Instead, it was a quiet acknowledgement of defeat, a surrender to the reality that some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. My attempts at self-improvement, while sincere, had barely scratched the surface of the deep-seated issues that drove me to sabotage everything good in my life. Sitting alone in the apartment that had once been our home, I was confronted with the totality of my loss. Ethan had moved on, building a life rich with love and success, while I was stuck in a limbo of my own making. The realization was a gut punch, a wake-up call to the fact that true change requires more than a change of scenery, it demands a transformation of the soul. As the night deepened, wrapping the world in its silent embrace, I understood that the journey ahead was mine alone to make. It was time to stop running, to face the demons of my past with courage and humility. The road to redemption was long and uncertain, but for the first time, I felt ready to take the first step. Not for Ethan, not for anyone else, but for myself. Because in the end, the only way out of the darkness is through it, one small, faltering step at a time. The morning sun barely crept through the curtains, casting a soft light that did little to warm the chill in my heart. With each passing day, the weight of my past decisions grew heavier, a constant reminder of everything I'd lost. From my vantage point, Ethan's life seemed to be a series of triumphs, each milestone a stark contrast to the stagnation of my own. I heard about his latest promotion through the grapevine, a testament to his hard work and resilience, qualities I once admired up close, and now from a distance, with a mix of pride and sorrow. As Ethan's life blossomed, mine seemed to shrink. The vibrant social circle that once revolved around me had dissipated, leaving behind a void filled with echoes of laughter and conversations that no longer reached my ears. My attempts to escape the consequences of my actions led me on a solo journey, a desperate search for redemption and self-discovery. But no matter how far I traveled, the shadows of my past loomed larger, a stark reminder that running from oneself is a race you can never win. Meanwhile, Ethan's journey took a different path. He found contentment, a peace that seemed unattainable to me. His experiences with me, once a source of pain, had faded into a chapter closed long ago. Ethan had moved on, building a family and experiencing the joys and challenges of a life I once dreamed of sharing with him. His ability to give so freely of himself, volunteering and donating to causes, underscored the vast gulf between us. His generosity was a reflection of his character, a stark contrast to selfishness that had defined my actions. In moments of quiet reflection, I faced the harsh truth of my continued struggle. My life, a series of half-hearted attempts at change, seemed to be a perpetual cycle of regret and isolation. The clarity I longed for remained elusive, a fleeting shadow always just out of reach. It was during one of these moments that I realized the change I so desperately sought had to come from within. But the path to true transformation was obscured by doubt and fear, leaving me to wonder if I was capable of such profound self-reinvention. Driven by a newfound resolve, I reached out, attempting to reconnect with the friends I had wronged, including Ethan. My efforts, however, were met with silence or polite refusals. The doors I had hoped to open remained firmly shut, my past actions casting a long shadow that time had yet to dispel. Ethan, in particular, remained an enigma, his life flourishing in ways that both heartened and haunted me. His ability to overcome the betrayal and find happiness was a testament to his strength, a quality that had drawn me to him and now kept me at bay. In the solitude of my reflections, I confronted the painful truth of my journey. The realization that honesty, fidelity, and the courage to face one's flaws were not just virtues but necessities. My chance at happiness with Ethan, lost forever to a past marred by deception and selfishness, was a lesson learned too late. As I pondered the ruins of what could have been, I understood that the path to redemption was mine to walk alone. Ethan's triumph over the past was not just a story of resilience but a beacon of hope for those willing to confront their darkest selves. Alone, yet surrounded by the remnants of my choices, I faced an uncertain future. The clarity I had sought, the moment of true understanding, had finally arrived, albeit at a great cost. My journey forward was unclear, but the first steps toward genuine change had been taken. In the quiet aftermath of my solitary reflections, I embraced the daunting task ahead, a journey not toward Ethan or the life we once shared, but toward a better version of myself. The moment I walked into that seminar, I should have turned around and left. But there he was, Alex, my first love from college, looking just as charming as he did years ago. My wedding band felt heavier, a stark reminder of the life I had built with David, my husband, who was at home probably fixing someone's computer issues or gaming with his online buddies. "Hey, Maria," Alex greeted, his smile as disarming as ever. I felt that old familiar spark ignite, a feeling I thought I had buried deep beneath years of marital routine and shared Netflix accounts. We talked, laughed, and it was as if no time had passed. But time had passed, and I was no longer just Maria, but David's wife. One evening, after the seminar had wrapped up and the afterparty was in full swing, Alex and I found ourselves alone, tucked away in a dimly lit corner of the hotel bar. The air between us was charged with an electricity that felt both thrilling and dangerous. One drink, I told myself, ignoring the warning bells in my head. One drink turned into several, and before I knew it, Alex's lips were on mine. The guilt hit me like a wave the moment we parted, a stark reminder of the betrayal I had just committed. This was a mistake, I whispered, a promise to myself that it was a one-time slip. But promises, much like glass once shattered, are hard to piece back together. The one-time slip spiraled into several months of secret rendezvous. I was leading a double life, juggling my role as a loving wife to David with the exhilaration and guilt of my affair with Alex. It was a balancing act that left me exhausted and torn. Then came the close call. David, ever so trusting, stumbled upon a message from Alex on my phone. "Who's Alex?" he asked, a simple question loaded with suspicion. "Just a new client who needs legal advice," I lied smoothly, hating how easily the deception rolled off my tongue. David believed me, his trust in me as unwavering as ever, and I felt a pang of shame for abusing it. Realization dawned on me like a cold shower. The risk of losing everything I cherished was too high a price to pay for fleeting moments of passion. I ended things with Alex, deleting his number and blocking him on all social media platforms. "It's over," I told myself, trying to forget the memories, the laughter, and the intimacy we shared. Our vacation in Italy was supposed to be a fresh start, an attempt to rekindle the romance between David and me. Yet, amidst the picturesque landscapes and romantic ambience, I found myself succumbing to temptation once again. Luca, a charming stranger with a captivating smile, became the focus of a night filled with thrill and self-loathing. I returned to David's side, the guilt of my actions a heavy weight on my conscience. Back home, I vowed to be the perfect wife, overcompensating for my indiscretions with affection and attention. I cooked David's favorite meals, listened to his work stories with genuine interest, and planned date nights, all in an effort to bury my guilt under layers of feigned normalcy. But guilt, much like a shadow, is a constant companion, and no amount of light can fully dispel its presence. The minute David suggested we try new hobbies together, I knew it was his way of bridging the gap that had grown between us. So, when I signed up for those fitness classes, it was with the intention of mending, not tearing further. But that was before I met Leo, the instructor whose charisma was as potent as any physical attraction I'd ever felt. "Push a little harder, you've got this," Leo encouraged, his hand lightly touching my back, sending an unexpected jolt through me. It was a touch meant to motivate, but it awakened something else within me. Leo's attention, his lingering glances, they made me feel desired in a way I hadn't in years. We fell into a passionate affair with the kind of recklessness that accompanies the forbidden. Sneaking around during lunch breaks and after work became our norm, each stolen moment feeling more thrilling than the last. "You're playing with fire," Jenna, my closest friend, warned after catching me daydreaming for the umpteenth time. Her concern was evident, but I brushed it off with a laugh that didn't quite reach my eyes. "It's just a bit of fun," I lied, both to her and myself. David's suspicion grew with every late return from the gym and every evasive answer I gave. "Working late again?" he'd ask, his voice tinged with doubt. I could tell he didn't believe me, but I wasn't ready to face the truth myself. The day he found the hotel receipt in my purse, I saw the trust we built crumble in his eyes. "It was for an office retreat," I stammered, a lie so flimsy it might as well have been transparent. David's gaze was piercing, searching for the wife he thought he knew. His next move was silent but devastating. A GPS tracker in my car, an invisible chaperone documenting my deceit. I continued to meet Leo, blissfully unaware of the net closing around us. It wasn't love, but the escape from reality he offered was intoxicating. The inevitable came when a colleague, a mutual friend of David and me, saw me with Leo. Bound by a sense of loyalty to David, he told him everything. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything I'd imagined. David, armed with undeniable evidence, his face a mask of betrayal and hurt, shattered the last vestiges of our marriage. The chapter of my life that I'd so carelessly rewritten was coming to a close, not with the promise of a new beginning, but with the stark realization of what I'd lost. David's trust, once my sanctuary, now lay in ruins, a casualty of choices I couldn't take back. The moment David walked through the door, evidence in hand, my heart sank into an abyss from which I knew there'd be no return. "I want a divorce," he said, his voice a cold blade slicing through the last thread of hope I clung to. His eyes, once filled with love, now bore into me with a heartbreak and rage that silenced any plea for forgiveness I might have mustered. I tried, though. God, how I tried. "David, please, let me explain." I begged, reaching for him, only to be met with a step back, his gesture a clear boundary I could no longer cross. My apologies, my tears, they meant nothing. The man I loved, the man I had vowed to spend my life with, was gone, replaced by a stranger wearing David's face, his heart hardened by my betrayal. The divorce was swift, a blur of legal formalities that stripped me of not just my marriage but everything we had built together. David, fueled by a vindictiveness I had never seen in him, made sure I left with nothing but the clothes on my back and a few personal belongings. I was cast out, not just from our home, but from the life I knew. As if the personal devastation wasn't enough, the news of our divorce and my affairs spread like wildfire, a sensational story for our small community and beyond. Friends who I thought would stand by me turned their backs, their silence a loud testament to their judgment. Colleagues, with whom I had shared countless lunches and coffee breaks, now whispered as I passed, their looks of pity and disdain a constant reminder of the ruin I had brought upon myself. Leo, the man for whom I had risked everything, turned out to be nothing more than a fleeting adventure. This was never meant to be anything serious. "Maria," he said, his words the final nail in the coffin of my hopes for solace. He walked away, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a life I had shattered with my own hands. Now, living in a small, dingy apartment, I found myself in isolation, a pariah in a world I once belonged to. My social circle, once vibrant and full, had evaporated, leaving me to face the long days and even longer nights alone. My reputation, once that of a respected paralegal and loving wife, was now tarnished beyond recognition. In a desperate attempt to find some semblance of the connection I have so carelessly thrown away, I reached out to Alex and Luca, hoping for understanding, maybe even forgiveness. But all I was met with was rejection and indifference. "I'm sorry, Maria, but I can't," Alex said, his voice void of the warmth it once held. Luca, ever the stranger, simply didn't respond. Each day became a battle, a struggle to find meaning in the chaos I had created. The guilt, the loneliness, the sheer weight of my actions bore down on me, a constant companion in my newfound solitude. I had lost everything in pursuit of something I couldn't even name, and now, I was left to face the consequences alone. The guilt was a constant, gnawing presence, eating away at me from the inside out. It followed me everywhere, a shadow I couldn't shake off. So, I made a decision, one of the few I hadn't regretted recently. I started going to therapy. Sitting on that cliché couch, I spilled out the mess of my life, hoping, somehow, to cleanse my soul and find a path to self-forgiveness. Work, once a refuge, became another battleground. My performance plummeted, my focus, shattered by the turmoil of my personal life, couldn't hold. My boss, who had always been supportive, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Maria, I've noticed you've been off your game, is everything all right?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded, a lie ready on my lips, but the truth spilled out instead. "I'm struggling," I admitted, the weight of those words feeling both liberating and terrifying. He warned me of potential dismissal, a reality check that I couldn't afford to ignore. Loneliness became my only constant companion, a bitter reminder of the consequences of my actions. In a desperate attempt for some semblance of connection, I adopted a cat. Whiskers, with her soft purrs and indifferent affection, offered a small solace in my sea of solitude. It was a comfort, albeit small, in the silent presence of another living being. The journey of self-reflection is a long and often painful one. As I delved deeper into my psyche, with my therapist's guidance, I confronted the harsh truth. The pain I caused wasn't just inflicted on David, it was a wound I had also inflicted on myself. Acknowledging that was a crucial step in my path toward healing. Eager to find redemption, I started volunteering at local charities. Helping others became a balm for my guilt-ridden soul. Each act of kindness, every grateful smile, felt like a step away from the person I used to be and a step closer to someone better. But the road was lonely. The fallout from my affair had left its mark, making it difficult to form new relationships. People were polite, but the warmth I longed for was missing. My past was a barrier I couldn't seem to cross. Then came the letter from David. My heart leapt at the sight of his handwriting, a mixture of hope and dread filling me. But the words within were not of forgiveness or reconciliation. It was a final goodbye, a closure he needed, and perhaps, deep down, so did I. The letter was a poignant reminder of all that was lost, a love that once was but would never be again. The chapter of our lives together was closed, permanently, by the very hand that once vowed to hold mine through thick and thin. The finality of it was a sobering reminder of the consequences of my choices. Yet, it also marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where I could hopefully rebuild from the ruins of my past, a journey of redemption and self-discovery. The night before my move, I couldn't sleep. My past, a tangled web of lies and betrayal, played on a loop in my mind. The weight of what I had done, the innocence I had corrupted, and the love I had shattered felt suffocating. "I need to leave," I whispered into the darkness, a vow to myself to seek redemption, to start anew away from the ghosts that haunted me. Dawn broke, bringing with it a sense of urgency. I packed the last of my belongings into my car, the compact space a stark reminder of how much I had lost. The drive to the new city was a blur, each mile a step further from my old life, each turn a twist away from the person I used to be. The new city, with its bustling streets and unfamiliar faces, was both a promise and a challenge. I hit the ground running, determined to rebuild my life from the ground up. But finding employment proved to be a hurdle I hadn't fully anticipated. My scandal, like a shadow, followed me, whispered doubts filling the ears of potential employers. "We'll be in touch," they'd say, a polite dismissal that left me feeling despondent. Eventually, a small law firm took a chance on me. The relief I felt was palpable, a tangible sign that perhaps I could turn things around. "We believe in second chances," the senior partner said, a statement that felt like a lifeline. I poured myself into my work, grateful for the opportunity to prove that I was more than my mistakes. Starting over wasn't just about finding a new job or moving to a new city, it was about redefining who I was. I vowed to live a life of honesty and integrity, lessons learned from the pain I had caused. It was a promise not just to myself but to those I had hurt, a silent plea for forgiveness I knew I might never receive. Reaching out to mutual friends of David and me was like walking a tightrope. The responses varied, some forgiving, offering tentative olive branches, while others were not ready to forget the past. Each interaction was a reminder of the bridges I had burned and the long road to reconciliation that lay ahead, should it ever come. In the midst of my attempts to rebuild, I found solace in writing. I started a blog, sharing my story anonymously. It was a cathartic release, a way to confront my demons and, hopefully, help others avoid the pitfalls that had ensnared me. If my story can prevent even one person from making the mistakes I did, then sharing it will have been worth it, I reasoned. Each word typed a step towards healing. This chapter of my life, unlike any before it, was marked by a stark honesty and a relentless pursuit of redemption. It was a journey fraught with challenges, but also filled with small victories, each one a testament to the strength it takes to start over. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could forge a path forward, one step at a time. The night I hit publish on my latest blog post, my heart raced with a mix of fear and liberation. Sharing my story, raw and unfiltered, felt like shedding a skin, leaving my vulnerabilities exposed to the world. To my surprise, the response was overwhelming. Comments poured in, not with judgment, but with empathy and understanding. I had found a community, a virtual embrace from strangers who appreciated my honesty and vulnerability. It was a small beacon of light in the otherwise dark expanse of my journey. Yet, when the screen dimmed and the world outside my window fell silent, the loneliness crept back in. Nights were the hardest. Guilt and regret were my constant companions, whispering reminders of what I had lost. I tossed and turned, replaying my mistakes, wondering how different things might have been if I had chosen differently. Therapy sessions became my lifeline, a space where I could unravel the knots of my past actions. Understanding the roots of your actions is the first step towards healing, my therapist would say, her voice a calm in the storm of my emotions. It was in these sessions that I learned the importance of self-improvement and forgiveness, not just of others, but of myself. To quiet my mind and escape the whispers of the night, I took up running. The rhythmic pounding of my feet against the pavement, the steady breaths filling my lungs, became a meditation. With each run, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter, the path ahead clearer. It was on one of these runs that I met Ella. Our conversations began with hesitant smiles and brief exchanges about the weather. But as the miles and days passed, a friendship blossomed. Ella, with her easy laugh and open heart, became a bridge to a world I thought I had lost forever. She was my first step towards social recovery, a reminder that not all was lost. The day I stumbled upon David's engagement announcement on social media, my heart stopped. There, smiling back at me from the screen, was the life I had once been a part of. The pain was sharp, a bitter reminder of the consequences of my actions. Yet, amidst the hurt, there was also a flicker of hope, for David, for his future happiness, and for my own journey forward. Emboldened by the support of my online community and the budding friendship with Ella, I threw myself into local community projects. Planting trees, organizing charity events, and participating in neighborhood cleanups, I found purpose. The respect I earned was modest but meaningful. Each small nod of recognition a step away from my past. Not everyone was welcoming, however. Whispers and sideways glances followed me in some circles, a backlash from those who couldn't see beyond the mistakes I had made. Their judgment stung, but it also steeled my resolve. Change is hard, and forgiveness even harder. I reminded myself, determined to prove through actions, not just words, that people could change. This chapter of my life was a mosaic of highs and lows, of setbacks and small victories. Each day brought its own challenges, but also opportunities for growth and redemption. My journey was far from over, but with each step forward, I was slowly but surely reshaping my story into one of resilience, hope, and a deepened understanding of the human capacity for change. The day I stood before my community, accepting the service award, my emotions were a tangled mess. Pride, for the recognition of my efforts to make amends. Sorrow, for the path that had led me here, and a poignant reminder of the bittersweet journey of redemption I was on. This award isn't just for me, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. It's for everyone who believes in second chances. My blog, once a personal diary of my darkest moments, had blossomed into a sanctuary for those wrestling with their own demons of guilt and betrayal. I poured my heart into every post, every piece of advice, hoping to light the way for others as lost as I had been. "You're not alone," became my mantra, a bridge of words spanning the gap between despair and hope. Despite the strides I had made, the quiet moments were a stark reminder that some wounds were too deep to ever fully heal. I learned to live with my regrets, accepting them as part of who I was, a mosaic of my mistakes and my efforts to right them. The realization was sobering, yet it brought a certain peace, an acceptance of my flawed humanity. Ella, my unexpected anchor, stood by me through it all. Our friendship, forged in the fires of my lowest points, had grown into an unbreakable bond. She was a constant reminder that forgiveness was possible, that the heart could open again even after being closed off by betrayal. "I'm proud of you," she'd say, her support unwavering, a beacon in my moments of doubt. The anniversary of my divorce was a day of introspection. I reflected on the tumultuous journey, the pain I had caused, and the strides I had made towards becoming a better person. The scars remained, etched into the fabric of my being, but they no longer defined me. I had grown, transformed by the lessons of my past, ready to face the future with a newfound resilience. Forgiving myself was the hardest battle I fought. It came slowly, a gradual release of the burden I had carried. Understanding that I couldn't change the past, but could shape my future, was a revelation. I vowed to live each day with purpose, to make amends through actions rather than words, to be the change I wished to see. Standing at the crossroads of my life, I looked back at the path I had traversed, marked by the footprints of my journey. Ahead lay uncharted territory, a future I was now ready to embrace, not as the woman I once was, but as the person I had become. I was forever marked by the choices of my past, living with the knowledge of their irrevocable consequences. Yet, I stepped forward, a testament to the power of redemption and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. The sun was already dipping low in the sky when we finally packed the last of our bags into the car. My husband, barely looking up from his phone, managed a brief, "Ready?" It felt more like we were heading to a business meeting than a weekend getaway. The drive was quiet, too quiet. Every now and then, I'd try to start a conversation, but it felt like I was talking to a brick wall. His mind was somewhere else, probably tangled up in work emails and deadlines. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness, remembering a time when we'd sing along to the radio, laughing and making plans. Now, it seemed like we were just sharing space, nothing more. Arriving at the cabin felt like stepping into a postcard. It was beautiful, surrounded by trees with leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. "This is nice," I said, hoping to break the ice. He nodded, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The distance between us felt like a chasm that no scenic view could bridge. The first night was as awkward as expected. We made small talk over dinner, but the silences were heavy, loaded with things unsaid. Later, in bed, we faced opposite walls, the silence deafening. Morning came too soon. I was greeted by the sound of his voice, not saying good morning to me, but speaking briskly on a work call. I felt a surge of frustration. Here we were, in this beautiful place, and yet we might as well have been 1,000 miles apart. I decided to get some air, hoping the forest could offer what my husband couldn't, peace. At the local store, stocking up on things we'd forgotten, I bumped into Alex. Alex, with that same easy smile and warm eyes that could light up the darkest days. We caught up, laughed, and for a moment, I felt a spark of something familiar, something exciting. It was a dangerous feeling, like playing with fire, but it reminded me that I wasn't just a wife or a background character in someone else's busy life. I was me. Returning to the cabin, I felt a mix of emotions. Guilt, for the thrill I felt with Alex. Sadness, for the state of my marriage. Determination, to not let this weekend be a waste. I wanted to shake my husband, to scream, "Look at me. I'm here, we're here, and we're slipping away from each other." But I knew it wasn't that simple. The getaway was supposed to reconnect us, but now I wasn't sure what it would take. I just knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. It was time for a change, but how and what remained to be seen. I told him I needed some fresh air, a hike by myself to sort through my thoughts. He didn't question it, just nodded, his eyes glued to his laptop screen. I felt a twinge in my chest, not sure if it was guilt or relief that he didn't press further. Meeting Alex wasn't something I had planned, not really, but once the idea took hold, it was all I could think about. The cafe was quaint, tucked away on a street I'd never have found without Alex suggesting it. Seeing him there, waiting, something in me relaxed for the first time in months. We talked like old times, his attention on me felt like a balm. I laughed more in that hour than I had in weeks. It was easy to forget, to get lost in the moment. Returning to the cabin was like stepping back into another world. My husband barely looked up as I walked in. "Good walk?" he asked, and I nodded, hating the ease with which the lie slipped out. I showered, letting the guilt wash over me, but it didn't rinse away. He was still working when I joined him in the living area, the glow of the screen illuminating his focused face. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap between us, but the words wouldn't come. The days that followed blurred into a pattern of deceit. Each meeting with Alex was a step further away from my husband. I told myself it was just coffee, just lunch, just talking, but I knew it was more. I could feel the distance growing, an emotional chasm that widened with every lie, every stolen moment. My husband's oblivion was a double-edged sword. Part of me wished he'd notice, confront me, fight for us. But he remained absorbed in his work, unaware of the storm brewing under our roof. It was easier this way, I told myself, easier to slip further into the affair. With each passing day, my emotional ties to my husband frayed. It wasn't just the physical betrayal, it was the secrets, the lies, the parts of myself I gave to Alex instead of him. I was losing myself in the deception, each layer of dishonesty distancing me further from the woman I once was. I knew this couldn't last, that the truth would come out eventually. But for now, I was caught in the thrill of the moment, the intoxication of being wanted, seen, in a way I hadn't felt in years. The guilt was always there, lurking in the background, but I pushed it away, convincing myself that I could navigate this tangled web I'd woven. It was a dangerous game, one I wasn't sure I could win, but I was too far in to turn back now. That morning, he was off work, which hardly ever happens. He wanted us to do something together, but I was already miles away in my head, thinking about the weekend. I told him about this wellness retreat I heard from a friend, saying it was something I needed to do alone. He looked disappointed, but he didn't push it. Meeting Alex was becoming the new normal, each time a bit more bold, a bit more reckless. I spun a web of lies to cover my tracks, each one more elaborate than the last. It was like I was someone else, living a double life. One day, while out with Alex, I bumped into a friend. Her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in suspicion. We talked, and I could see the judgment in her eyes, but she promised she wouldn't tell. Walking away from that conversation, my stomach was in knots. It was getting too close for comfort. Then, there were the expenses. Little things here and there, but they added up. My husband noticed. "What's all this?" he asked, scrolling through our bank statement. "Just some things for myself," I said, trying to sound casual. "Self-care, you know." He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. The tension in the air was thick, though, like a storm brewing on the horizon. The day he found the gift from Alex was the day everything nearly came crashing down. It was just a small thing, a necklace, but it was enough. "Who's this from?" he asked, holding it up. My heart stopped. "Oh, that? It's from Lisa." I lied, mentioning a friend he rarely met. "She thought I could use a pick-me-up." He studied me for a moment, then nodded, though I could see the wheels turning in his head. Our home felt like a battleground, silent and charged. I could see the frustration in his eyes, feel the distance growing between us. I was living a lie, and it was only a matter of time before it all came out. I wanted to stop, to go back to how things were, but I didn't know how. It was like being caught in a current, unable to swim back to shore. The day started like any other, but there was something in the air, a kind of tension I couldn't quite put my finger on. He was quiet at breakfast, more than usual, his eyes on me in a way that felt like he was looking right through me. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just work stress. Little did I know, he had started putting his detective skills to use, watching me closer than ever before. It never even crossed my mind he would do something like that. Why would he? I thought I had been careful, thought I had covered my tracks. But I underestimated him, underestimated what he was capable of when his instincts kicked in. Then there was the day he ran into my friend, the one who had seen me with Alex. I didn't know about their meeting until much later, but when he came home that night, there was a look in his eyes I couldn't quite decipher. Something had shifted, and deep down, I started to feel the first twinges of fear. Using his interrogation skills, he started asking questions. Not directly about Alex or the affair, but little things, probing, testing my answers. I felt like I was constantly on the edge, trying to balance on a tightrope of my own lies. He had been gathering evidence, something I was blissfully unaware of. In my world, wrapped up in the excitement and danger of the affair, I forgot who I was dealing with. A detective, someone trained to see what others miss, to connect dots that on the surface don't seem to connect at all. The special dinner invitation caught me off guard. "I think we need this, just the two of us," he said, and part of me wanted to believe it was a step towards fixing whatever had broken between us. I missed us, missed what we had before all the lies and secrets. So, I said yes, hoping for a night where we could pretend everything was okay. Sitting across from him at that dinner, the atmosphere was charged with an unspoken tension. He was calm, too calm, and it was then I realized this wasn't a dinner to rekindle our relationship. This was something else entirely. The moment of truth, the confrontation I hadn't seen coming but should have. All the lies, the sneaking around, it was all about to come crashing down. And there I was, completely unprepared for the fallout. We sat down for what was supposed to be a special dinner, just the two of us trying to reconnect. But the moment he started speaking, I knew this wasn't about rekindling anything. He laid it all out, every piece of evidence he had gathered about the affair. Photos, messages, receipts. I couldn't believe it. How did it all come to this? At first, I tried to deny it, to make up some story to explain everything away. But it was useless. He had everything laid out so clearly, so methodically, there was no room for doubt. The look in his eyes, it wasn't anger, not really. It was hurt, deep hurt and disappointment. That's what got me. I broke down, admitting to everything. It felt like the world was falling apart around us. The emotional fallout was immediate and devastating. We both sat there, in a kind of stunned silence, the air heavy with everything that had just been laid bare. Our marriage, once something so strong and certain, now felt fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. Then came the ultimatum. It was simple and stark. End the affair and commit to counseling, or it was over, divorce. I felt like I was at a crossroads, not just about our marriage, but about who I wanted to be. I chose to end the affair and try to mend what I had broken. Telling Alex was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Not because I wanted to stay with him, but because it made everything so real. Ending it. Hearing the finality in my voice, it was like waking up from a dream. A very bad dream. The counseling sessions were tough, each one a step through the pain and betrayal. But we were doing it together, working through the layers of hurt and mistrust. It wasn't easy. There were days I thought it was too much, that we couldn't get past it. But then there were moments, small ones, where I could see us, the real us, starting to emerge again. It was a long road, filled with ups and downs. But that confrontation, as painful as it was, started us on the path to healing. It was a reminder of how much we had to lose, and what we were fighting to save. After everything that happened, after the confrontation and the tears, we started the slow process of rebuilding. It wasn't like flipping a switch, it was more like trying to piece together a shattered vase, knowing it would never look the same again. But maybe, we thought, it could still hold water, still be beautiful in its own way. Trust, that was the biggest hurdle. Every time he looked at me, I could see the shadow of doubt in his eyes. It hurt, knowing I was the cause of that. We had long talks, the kind where every word weighed a ton, trying to lay a new foundation for our relationship. It was exhausting, trying to rebuild trust brick by brick. We set new rules, new boundaries for our relationship. Communication was the key, we kept hearing from our counselor. So, we talked and talked, even when it was the last thing we wanted to do. It felt like walking a tightrope, trying to find the balance between honesty and too much information. To bring back some spark, some joy, we started doing new things together. Hiking on weekends, taking a cooking class, anything to feel connected again. It was awkward at first, like we were strangers trying to be friends. But slowly, laughter returned, filling up the empty spaces between us. I also started seeing a therapist on my own. I needed to understand why I did what I did, why I risked everything for something that was never real. It was hard, facing those ugly parts of myself, but necessary. I couldn't fix us if I didn't fix me first. Our lives became an open book. No more secrets, no more lies. It was scary, living like that, but also liberating. There was a comfort in knowing that there was nothing left to hide, that the worst had already happened and we were still here, still trying. Forgiveness didn't come all at once. It was more like a slow thaw after a harsh winter, bits of green emerging from the snow. There were good days and bad days, days when the hurt seemed too much to bear, and days when hope felt within reach. But gradually, the good days started to outnumber the bad. It wasn't easy, rebuilding from the ashes of our old life. But piece by piece, we were doing it. Forgiveness, we learned, wasn't just a moment of grace but a journey we were walking together. And with each step, we were coming closer to something new, something stronger. The day we renewed our vows was quiet, just us and a few close family members. It wasn't like the first time, with all the fuss and the big white dress. This time, it was more real, more about us and the commitment we were making to move forward, together. Standing there, repeating those vows, it felt like we were acknowledging everything we'd been through and still choosing each other. Our families were our rock, always there, offering a shoulder to cry on or an ear to listen. It amazed me how much strength you can draw from the people who love you, even when you feel like you're at your lowest. We started setting new routines, making sure we dedicated time just for us, whether it was a date night or just a quiet evening at home. It was about making us a priority again, showing that we both wanted this to work. Intimacy was another thing. It didn't come back all at once, like flipping a switch. It was slow, sometimes awkward, but there was a new depth to it. It felt like we were getting to know each other all over again, but in a deeper, more meaningful way. Talking about the issues that led to the affair was tough. It meant opening up about things we'd both rather forget, but it was necessary. We had to face what happened head-on, understand it, so we could move past it. The idea of another getaway could have been a trigger, but we approached it differently this time. It was about healing, about finding that connection again. And surprisingly, it worked. Being away from the everyday stresses, just focusing on us, it reminded me of why we fell in love in the first place. That getaway was a turning point. We laughed more, talked more, and I could feel the love that had been buried under all the hurt and anger slowly coming back to the surface. Looking towards the future now, it's with a sense of hope. I won't pretend it's all fixed, that everything's perfect. But we're both committed to this journey, to rebuilding what we have. It's going to be long and probably not easy, but for the first time in a long time, it feels possible. We're moving forward, together, and that's